Stay frosty and check out redzonecoins.com for the cheapest, fastest coins on the market. Use code DIRECTOR at checkout for 15% off.
Okay, what up, brothers? What's up? It's the Director. Well, Chargers, you did it. I actually really didn't want to make this video this year. I felt there was no way we'd be in a position where Chargers fans would question the effectiveness of a tank mid-season, and yet here we are. The Chargers are now 2-7, ranking at the bottom 6 teams of the league. Even though this team has so much talent, they've got no business talking top 10 draft pick. Once again, we find ourselves in this position once again. Now, I must remind you that there is a slim chance, a very slim chance of making the playoffs this year due to an expanded playoff team format this year by the NFL. But even then, I'd say it'd be very difficult for the Chargers to break in. I just feel like we have passed the point of no return in those regards. So this has some Chargers fans asking and questioning, is this the time to be tanking the rest of the season in order to improve our draft position? Now, I will admit there is some strategic advantage to tanking at this point, but I also must take my own personal stance in this subject as well. I do not believe in tanking. In the end, I think it does more harm than good. I feel like tanking could result in a change of culture in the locker room, destroying the moral fiber of a team. And when you're bringing up a new quarterback like Justin Herbert, a new rookie stud, I think this is the worst time to start intentionally dropping games. I believe a team should try their best regardless of record to win. It's a mentality I hope never to see deterred. So no, I don't believe in tanking. However, the Chargers seem to be in a rough position when it comes to the subject of winning this year. And if using improved draft position as a bright side makes us feel better, I'm all about that. There is a bright side even in the darkest of hours, and this may end up being the bright side for the Chargers by season's end. So in this video, we're going to be talking a little bit about draft prospects, positions, scenarios, and positive consequences of a tanking season. Even if the term tank is being used loosely, and it just means we lose a lot more games, intentional or not. Before we do get into this video, guys, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this content. The small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into this video. Lights, camera,
action.
Week 11 is just around the corner, and the Chargers currently struggle with a 2-7 record on the year. Yep. I've been very discouraged by the way that this year has shaken out. I'm sure most fans have been as well. There are many consequences to a 2-7 year. The firing of coaches, trading away players for more draft capital, and letting players walk away in free agency. A terrible record like this could trigger something resembling a small rebuild, which in itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. But it does also carry positive consequences as well. And yep, I'm talking about draft position. The bright side of all of this is how the Chargers will be positioned 2 years in a row. Last April, they drafted their quarterback of the future, and surprise, he's actually a stud and still in contention for offensive rookie of the year, even with a bad record. You know, see Kyler Murray's year that he won with a 5-10-1 record. It's still absolutely possible. And again, the bright side here is we may pick up another stud for our future with another top 10 pick in the draft. And this may actually prove even more advantageous for a team like the Chargers, because many believe that the Chargers are a snake-bitten team. After all, almost every single loss for the past 2 seasons have come within 8 points or less. Had things gone just a little bit differently in the 2019 season for the Chargers, they could have easily gone 12-4 or even 13 13-3. Crazy to think, right? The Chargers were a field goal or a touchdown away in 8 games last year from being a top 10 team. Now, some will say it's because of injuries, some will say it's because of bad coaching, but I think many will straight up say it's because of bad luck. And that narrative does continue into this year. Chargers fans know more than ever the importance of closing out games, because every single game this year has been decided by a single score. This team, as horrendous as our record is right now, has shown we are capable of being a 7-2 or even an 8-1 team right now. A single score in every loss has held them back at this point. So the point here is, I think the Chargers are a bit of a mirage team. We are not that bad. Now, our record would indicate that we are as bad as teams like the Washington football team, Jaguars, or even the Jets. Yet, I'm sure most competent NFL fans would agree they wouldn't stand a chance against the Chargers. Even if you only factor that we're the only team with a franchise quarterback, that still gives us a huge advantage over most bottom 10 teams this year. We just have to learn how to close out games and maybe strike ourselves of that curse and bad luck, because we just have way too much talent. And I'll admit, a lot of that talent isn't even on the field right now. Austin Eckler, Joey Bosa, Derwin James, Chris Harris Jr., Drew Tranquill, Mike Pouncey, Trey Turner, Brian Bulaga, and even more have been absent for most, if not all, of the year. That is a huge amount of playmakers gone for the Chargers. So what happens next year? If the Chargers could remain mostly healthy, we are a dangerous Super Bowl contender as any team in the league. The last time I remember the Chargers having a mostly healthy season, we went 12-4. And of course, I'm talking about the 2018 season where we smacked the Ravens in the playoffs. That was a great year. My point here is that the Chargers as a roster and as a team are way better than 2-7, especially when healthy. So the fact that we could be positioned for yet again another top 10 pick could stack us even further for a magical season in the future. Because many believed at the beginning of the season, before all the injuries and stuff like that, that the Chargers were one of the best well-rounded rosters in the league, and that could be built upon during the draft. So before we jump into some of my favorite draft prospects, I do want to acknowledge one last perk of a 2-7 start, and that's the shifting of coaches and personnel. Like I mentioned above, the Chargers have a huge injury problem, and this is one of the worst years that I've seen. Maybe this does force the Chargers to move away from John Lott, our strength and conditioning coach. And if anything, the horrendous haircut that he gave Justin Herbert should be the final nail in that coffin. Special teams coach George Stewart should be on the move as well, seeing one of the worst seasons that I've seen as a Chargers fan, maybe since 2010. And defensive coordinator Gus Bradley should be let go as well. And finally, the final guy we have to bring up here is Anthony Lynn, who could be fired. He's definitely on the hot seat right now. Now, as a human being, I do feel for these guys, because a lot of their failure could be chalked up to just bad luck. But I also do think it could be better for this team in the end to change up their personnel. There's no guaranteed that we're going to make a flurry of coaching moves this offseason, but I think a record like 3-13 or even 4-12 could certainly force the team's hand. And optimistically, the Chargers could land a coaching staff that's better suited for the new Chargers. So, all of that being said, put to the side, draft prospects. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this video. Let's say the Chargers do tank. Yuck. I don't even like saying it. I won't rule it out because I don't know what goes on behind the scenes there, but tank or not, let's just say the Chargers lose a bunch more games. Let's say we land a top 5 or even top 10 pick. Where do we go from here? Well, there's a few guys I really like. Let's say if the season were to end right now, the Chargers would possess the 5th pick in the draft. And this could be pretty big for a few reasons. For one, let's take a look at the teams in front of us. The New York Jets, Jacksonville, Washington, and Dallas. 3 out of those 4 teams need a quarterback pretty bad. Some could argue that the Cowboys could even let Dak Prescott walk, so you could even argue that they would need a quarterback as well. This is pretty big for the Chargers, as many believe this to be one of the strongest quarterback classes we've seen in a very long time. Let's take a look at a few mock drafts. Now, I think it's pretty clear it's a consensus that the Jets and Jaguars would both be taking the quarterbacks of their future. Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields are just the kind of players that can transform a franchise. But it doesn't stop there when it comes to talented quarterbacks. If we scroll down here to Trey Lance of North Dakota State and Zach Wilson of BYU, they're both projected in like the top 11 picks as well. I could definitely see these guys going a lot higher. And then scroll even further down, some guys are super high on Kyle Trask as well. Where is he down here? Projected 31 to the Saints. There is just a ton of quarterback talent this year, okay? And that positions us very, very well right now. So my first scenario in this unique quarterback heavy class is that the Chargers could trade out of the top 5 spot. There's just too many teams that would want to get their hands on a franchise quarterback. I think we could see some of the craziest trades of all time. And honestly, I'd like the Chargers to be part of that if we could. So me personally, I see the top 3 guys drafted as Lawrence, Fields, and Lance. I really do feel like the Washington football team here has moved away from Dwayne Haskins. And I think Trey Lance is just too good of a prospect to pass up on. That would leave Zach Wilson and Kyle Trask still on the board for a desperate QB needy team. Now this leaves the Chargers with some fantastic options. Now if it were me, if Penei Sewell is still on the board at number 5, you take him. No questions asked. You reunite Herbert with Sewell and feel great that you've got your tackle of the future. And Sewell projects to be one of the best, if not the clear-cut best offensive lineman prospect of the draft for a reason. He's insane. And again, he carries incredible chemistry with Justin Herbert already, so it's a no-brainer for me. Now, what if he's gone by pick number 5, which there's a pretty good chance for that. If he is gone, there's a very good chance that Trey Lance is still on the board. This is where I start to take calls for a trade. I can see the Giants, maybe the Panthers, the Falcons, and the Broncos being very desperate to get their hands on Trey Lance. And I say we take it, man. We could see a huge return in draft capital for a guy like Trey Lance. We could be talking like 2 first rounds, 2nd rounds, and beyond for a guy in the top 5, especially a quarterback. As an example of trading into the top 10 in the draft, let's take a look at the Steelers' 2019 trade for Devin Bush. They gave up their 1st round, 2nd round, and 3rd round in the 2020 draft to move up 10 spots to select Devin Bush. And this was for a linebacker at a much lower pick. The 5 spot in a quarterback heavy class could be worth a lot more. The Chargers could essentially set themselves up for a monster 2020 and 2021 draft with a single move. So if there's ever a year to see a bright side in a bad record, it's this year, because draft position will be more valuable than we've seen in a long time, especially with how high the Chargers pick projects to be. So let's say we do trade with the team like, you know, the New York Giants or the Panthers, Atlanta, Denver, or maybe even San Francisco. We would still be positioned to pick up some serious talent. Names like, you know, Jamar Chase could still be there. Gregory Rousseau, Caleb Farley, all these high side caliber players could still be in play. Some of you guys may say, oh, they're still not going to be there. You know, they're getting picked up here at the 6 and 7 spot. Well, you have to consider that a lot of these names are going to fall because teams are reaching to get their quarterbacks at the top end of the draft. Hell, there could even be a chance that Penei Sewell still falls to us somewhere at the 7 or 8 spot. You really never know. The draft is almost unpredictable in that way, especially this year with so many quarterbacks. But that could be optimistic thinking. But even on the lower end down here, let's say, okay, a lot of these guys do get picked up. Let's say we do trade with the Niners or even the Broncos and we pick up their 12th or 11th pick. We could still pick up guys like Alex Leatherwood or Jalen Waddle. Imagine getting one of these guys and still setting yourself up with additional multiple picks in the top 4 rounds and another first in the 2022 draft. It seems like a great deal to me. But let's say the Chargers do stay put at 5, which is completely possible. And again, my biggest target, if we're going to pass up on a trade, is going to be Penei Sewell. Okay? And if he's not there, I really suggest that we try to move back. But even if we don't, we could likely land the draft's best wide receiver or cornerback. And at this point, I do think my pick would be Patrick Surtain II. This guy's a monster, standing at 6'2". He would likely instantly become one of the league's best corners, and you could count on him to cover guys like Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, so I'd be all for it. Now, if Sewell and Patrick Surtain are gone, I say we stack our chips on Justin Herbert and give him Jamar Chase, especially especially if they elect to let Mike Williams walk, which I really hope they don't. Still, Chase is being compared to guys like Julio Jones, AJ Green, and Victor Cruz. That's pretty impressive. Now, what I want to see is the Chargers to move Keenan Allen to the slot where he sees some of his best production and bring a guy like Chase in to dominate the outside. Wow, wouldn't that be something? So if the Chargers do decide to stay at the 5 spot, I think there's a very little chance we don't pick up a huge name like Patrick Surtain, Jamar Chase, or even Penei Sewell. Especially because I could see the top 2, maybe even 3 or 4 picks going quarterback this year. I think would be a lock to pick up Sewell, Surtain, or Chase. And you know what? I'd be very happy with that. Now, my preference as of right now, which could certainly change, is to grab Penei Sewell. You cannot ignore his production, and not to mention his stellar chemistry already with Justin Herbert. The Chargers' offensive line has been too bad for too long. It's time to start throwing some serious draft capital at the line, and it starts with Sewell this year. If he is unavailable, my next preference is to trade back. I think we could ask a king's ransom for a top 5 pick in a quarterback heavy class, and someone would pay it. And my final preference would be to grab Surtain or Chase at the 5 spot if we do decide to stay put. Either one of those guys would be a massive addition to this team. Wow, we're already talking draft in November. Kind of crazy, but this is where we are, and this is definitely the first of very many videos, because as of a lot of you know, I love to get crazy with mock drafts, player profiles, and scenarios the closer we do get to February, and I guess technically April. And I'd say I actually really enjoy covering the postseason just as much as the regular season, maybe even more sometimes. There's just so many possibilities. So to close out this video, I hope Chargers fans are walking away with a little bit more hope for the 2021 season and maybe a little bit more optimism in our season this year as we continue to unintentionally tank. Because on top of adding some exceptional talent in the draft, the Chargers will have a lot of returning talent in 21. Again, Austin Eckler, Joey Bosa, Derwin James, Chris Harris Jr., Drew Tranquill, Trey Turner, Brian Bulaga will all rejoin their teammates, hopefully fully healthy. And yes, there's a chance that the injury curse follows us into next year. But like we saw in 2018, there's always a chance that it doesn't. And add to that an amped up roster from this draft class. Oof, the snake-bitten Chargers could be looking to finally break that curse. And it all started with one epic sacrifice, one offering to the football gods, and that was Justin Herbert's luscious locks. Well, that's all I've got for today's video. If you guys did enjoy this content, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. Post in the comments section below too some of your early draft prospects and scenarios that you would like to see. I know it's a little bit early, but hey, we're 2-7. It's time to start talking about stuff like that. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. We'll see you next time, and as always, bolt up and stay frosty.